This is just a little hobby of mine. It's not particularly complicated, and it's kind of fun. I'm not a true artist, but I enjoy doing it. I've done art on paper and just started doing rocks a while ago. We have a variety of things you can do. I use almost exclusively acrylic paints. You can use any kind of acrylic paint. You can use acrylic inks. You can use the thicker artist paints. But what is the most cost-effective and really works the best, I have found, is just little craft paints. They come in a huge variety of colors. They come in metallics. They come in paints that sort of change color from the direction, interference paints they call them, that have different characteristics. You can put glazes on them to make them have a little iridescence. I've got several on here that have that. You can get rocks from a variety of places.
My house.
Yeah. Come in my garden, huh? We like to take walks out on, various places out in the Ouachitas, and we pick up a lot of rocks. Smoother rocks are easier to paint on than rough rocks. I used to buy bags of these very smooth rocks at Lowe's. They haven't had them lately, but if you find them, they make excellent painting rocks. If you find rocks that are natural rocks that are rougher, you can put your finish on them first, then paint on them, and then finish them again. All of the rocks you see out here have a finish on them. Because they last longer, they fade resistant. They can, if you want to put them at the base, out in your garden or at the base of plants. These are all fairly small. I've got a couple of bigger rocks at home that I'm kind of deciding what I'm going to do with.
When you say finish, are you talking about your paint or your...
No, I'm talking about a finish that goes on top of the paint that will protect the paint from weathering.
So you have
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a second.
And that goes on first if you have a rough rock.
If you have a rough rock, you can, when you finish it, if you put a finish on first, it makes it a little smoother. You don't have to do that, but it makes it a little smoother and a little easier to paint on. Some of these I did not put a finish on first. Others, this one has a big finish on it because it's a very rough rock. I haven't painted on it yet, but I'll finish it over it again once I paint on it. You can use very inexpensive little brushes you pick up at Walmart or any hobby store. This one is probably a $1 brush, and I cut some of the. I learned this from one of my YouTube artists. I cut a lot of the bristles out and there's only 8 or 10 bristles, and it makes really fine, and then I bent it like that, and it makes really fine lines. Finer lines than my hand is steady enough for. The other thing that is real helpful, now a lot of people will just paint their whole rock white, and then you can draw your design on, and you can paint it out if you don't like it. You can correct it a million times, just put another coat of white paint on. If you want the natural rock to show through, then you can't do that. You can't really correct. But if you want to draw your designs on, get hold of a chalk pencil or a pastel pencil, because you can draw on your rock as often as you want, and then it just comes right off. So if you do a design of a butterfly and you don't like the shape of the wing and you want to redraw it, a chalk pencil will work far better than a graphite pencil, because once the graphite goes on the rock, it's there. You can't correct it. So you can get these at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, pastel or chalk pencil. They're a little hard to sharpen, but that's helpful. Like for drawing something that I'm not that good, so I'll rub it out and start over again, sometimes more than once. The other thing that's real handy is, and I didn't know about these, learned this from another YouTube artist, like the ones that have lots of dots on them. It will drive you crazy to do that with a brush, and they make, I never knew this, they make all sorts of tools. They're called dotting tools, and women use them to decorate their fingernails. Do we have anybody here who decorates their fingernails? I didn't think so. But anyway, apparently it's a thing. And you buy these sets. They come in a bunch of different sizes. And they cost $3 or $4 for 5 or 6 of them. That'll give you a dozen different sizes.
Where do you get those?
I think Walmart sells them.
Like nail polish?
Yeah, in the nail polish department. Anything like a Sally's Beauty Supply would have them. You can order them on Amazon. I suspect you may be able to get them at Hobby Lobby and Michael's. I'm not sure about that, but they're not hard to come by, and they're really inexpensive. And if you like to make dots that are actually round, this is the win on that. I'll use things like a little compass, to draw circles. I went through a mandala and a Zentangle phase a while back, which Zentangles are repeated patterns. You can look those up. They look nice on rocks. And, I did some dot mandalas and, just different things. Anything your imagination can come up with, as well as, butterflies, plants, whatever you like.
So you drew, all these are your drawings?
Yes.
Have you ever used like graphite paper or something for tracing?
Now I certainly have when I do something like on a sheet of paper or canvas or something, I might do that. But you could probably do it just fine on something with a pretty flat surface. Some of these are round. I'm not sure how that would work.
But I just know some of us aren't quite as talented as you are.
Well, this is a pattern. There's a name for it in the Zentangle world, and I decided, it was my decisions how to, decorate it and whatnot. But that's a known pattern, and I started out with a protractor, a compass, and then just did the lines from there. There's all sorts of little tools that you can use. Somebody makes this little angle brush, which is helpful. But it's you all are seeing the ones that didn't come out so good and ended up down the hillside, So rocks are cheap. You want to paint on canvas and you're going to pay what, $20 or $30 for 2 or 3 canvases, but rocks are cheap. So I encourage you to just go and have some fun with it. If you want to do you can kind of see on some of these like designs, and I don't know, I can't remember whether I did that one or not. Sometimes your paint won't show up terribly well on the surface of the rock. So in this instance, that's what I did a while back, I don't remember, but I probably painted it white. Once I got the design the way I wanted it, I painted it white, and then I applied my color to it. That also means that if you don't quite like how your color is, you can just put another color white on it and start over again. But once you get paint on the surface of the natural rock, then that's what's going to be there. This one, I didn't like how my yin yang sign came out, so I painted the interior. I'd already actually put my finish on it, and I painted that black and did another one. I haven't gotten it epoxied again yet, but so there are certain ways you can save yourself and redo things. But all of the painting stuff is really just really basic painting skills. You can find any sort of basic instruction book to teach you how to make a leaf or a petal or something. I do always finish my rocks. There are 2 different kinds of finishes that I use. There are a number of different ways to finish rocks. 2 of them that I use. These rocks here, they were very smooth to start with and they're nice, but they have a soft finish on them, which is, it's basically a varnish. This is an artist varnish that you would use on a painting. There are some that are a little less expensive that you can get at Hobby Lobby called DuraClear. DuraClear also makes a whole bunch of these paints. Deco Art, DuraClear, there are a number of, or Dura something or other, Deco Art. Anyway, many of these companies also make a little varnish that comes in it's something that looks like this. But it makes kind of a soft finish. You can put a couple of coats on. If it were a rougher rock, this maybe has one coat on it, but you could put 2 or 3 coats on it if you have a little bit rougher rock. It makes a nice, kind of a soft finish. My personal preference is the ones that are a little more realistic. I like this softer finish on. The hard, shiny finish that you see here is a 2-part epoxy. Okay, this is a 2-part finish. It's epoxy. It's a little more involved. I really recommend that you read the manufacturer's instructions very carefully, or you go and watch a YouTube video on it. But what I would caution you on is there are many types of epoxy. There are several brands that are targeted at people who are hobbyists. They are much less toxic. This brand, there's one called Art Resin. Art Resin has a series of very good YouTube videos on how to use it. There are some that are used on bigger scale pieces of furniture, big things like that, that you have to wear a respirator that have a lot of toxicity to them. So if you're going to go with an epoxy finish, be sure you're getting one that's targeted at the kind of thing that we do. The basic process for this is that you take equal amounts of the hardener and the epoxy and you mix them thoroughly for a number of minutes, and then you apply it, and then it has to stay dust-free for several days. It also has a tendency to have bubbles. First of all, you have to mix it exactly, and it doesn't take a lot. I could probably do every rock out here for 2 tablespoons of each of these products, and you stir and stir and stir and stir and stir. What I do is I get rubber gloves on, and I just put it all over with my hands. And then I take a straw and I blow the bubbles out. It's the CO2 in your breath with a little bit of air that will help you take the bubbles out. Now, more serious artists get a little butane tool, like if you were doing creme brulee or something like that. If you're doing a larger area, that's the tool they use to really get the bubbles out. Some, artists, particularly modern artists, will put an epoxy finish on their 3x2 paintings. It self-levels. If you use too much, you will get a big ring on the bottom, like on this rock, which I got a big ring on the bottom. You can take that off with a Dremel and put another little coat on it. It's so, believe me, I've learned all the tricks from all the mistakes you can possibly make. This one, for instance, I need to redo the epoxy on it. This was just a pretty rock, and I epoxied that one when I had a little left over because it makes it look like it's wet all the time. It was just a pretty rock. I like rocks, We go out and hike around and pick up rocks. Come home from a hike with 2 pounds or 3 pounds of rocks in my pockets. I'm looking to see if there's anything else you need to know. It's like anything else anybody does. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and you don't have to show anybody the ones you don't like. So it's particularly I find some of the Zentangle-y mandala things to be very meditative. I do some of those on paper as well, if you just want to take your mind off various things you might want to take your mind off of. It's a good way to do it.
You said the soft ones only have maybe 2 coats on them?
Yeah. Now these particular rocks, this one, and actually several of these came out of the same bag. Yeah. But these 2 rocks came out of the same bag. This one's got the epoxy finish, turns it much darker. These were very smooth rocks, so I did this one a year or so ago. I think I just painted on there and gave it 1 coat. This one being a natural rock, that one being a natural rock, I epoxied that one. This one maybe has 2 or 3 coats. This one I epoxied. I wish I had done just the regular soft finish on that one because I like it better on the natural rocks, but it will help you get a smoother coat. And you can put as many coats on as you feel like. The varnish will dry in 2 or 3 hours, and it's not a big deal. to do that, and it doesn't tend to clump up on the bottom either unless you just really use a whole lot.
Paint that on?
Sometimes I use a brush. I've also been known to just put a glove on.
So you have to let it dry if you're using it first.
Yeah.
And how long does that take?
A couple hours. If it's a real hot, humid day, you might leave it 3 hours, 4 hours. But it will dry and cure fairly quickly. This stuff, it has to be dust-free 48 to 72 hours. What I do with it is I get a Walmart tub, a bottom and a top, and I use, I think I brought some. Anyway, a lot of times I will use a freezer paper because it's slick on one side, and I'll tape it down, and I'll do, mix and do and put it on there, and then I will put it down on the slick paper, and then I'll take the Walmart tub and put it on top and leave it for 48 to 72 hours. You could probably handle it in 24 hours. Once I'm done with it, I just, leave it alone for a while. Because you don't want any dust on it. If it gets any dust on it, it will mar the finish. So that's how I go about it. And I'll do 8 or 10 rocks at a time if I'm using this stuff. The other thing they tell you is that you should use this within a year. But I've also, because it'll start yellowing, for the kind of thing you're doing here, apparently it's not going to make any real difference. If you were doing it on a modern art painting that had a lot of white in it, you'd probably want to use it up, but I've used it after a year. I'm getting drummed out of the artist regiment, but anyway, that's the way I do it. But does anybody have any questions?
This is very helpful.
Oh, well, thank you.
And these weather okay outside?
Yeah,
Pretty good.
pretty good. I mean, I've only been doing this for a few years, so don't come get me later. There's some YouTube artists that I've listed by name on my board here that I've learned a lot from. I mean, if you really start looking in their lists of paintings, you'll probably see one or two that came straight out of there. But there's a lot of good information. The Rachel's Rocks gal is the one who has some good videos on how to do the epoxy, and I would really recommend it. If you want to do the epoxy, don't do it on just what I've told you. Go find, watch a video a time or two. Art Resin makes some really good ones.
When you do a really big rock, how do you handle putting a coating, a finish coating on something that large?
Well, I haven't done one that large, but probably the way I would go about it is I would take my freezer paper down, and I would get my stuff mixed up, and I would probably get both hands gloved, and I would rub it all over it. Remember, it's going to self-level. It's going to go around it, and then I would probably at the end try to wipe off the underneath part and get it as, maybe let it sit 10 minutes or so and try to get it to where it wasn't pooling at the bottom. But remember, you can always do mostly just the top and then come back and turn it over when it's completely done and do the other side. This one had a terrible big ring on the bottom, and I got as far as dremeling it off. And the next time I do rocks, I'll probably take just a little thin coat and put it on with my finger, and to where it's not dripping over the side. If I want to. I mean, it doesn't really show. I would do the top first, and just remember, you can sand it off, dremel it off, anything like that.
What kind of paint for the initial figure that you're going to do? What do you really recommend?
Most of the time, I really recommend these inexpensive paints. I have some more artist grade paints, and they tend to be thicker. So it would kind of depend on what you were doing, but I would say for almost any circumstance you can use little craft paints. I mean, you go to, they're very cost effective. Now these are not real artist grade paints, but they are thicker, and I have a couple of times I've used a little bit thicker white with a sponge to get a base. to get a good base for the color to go on top of. If you're doing a large area in white with a brush, it's real hard to get it sort of good even coat. So that's when a sponge comes in handy. It's about the only thing I use the sponge for is to, get my white evenly. If I was going to do, like a bigger area. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is just experimentation. Well, that worked and that didn't. It's not like anything else.
So like
It's not rocket science.
spray varnish wouldn't work. This is sturdier.
What kind of varnish?
A spray varnish.
I know people use spray varnish. I do not like sprays. I'm asthmatic and I just don't like them.
Yeah.
So if you were to do a spray, I know some people, I've seen some folks use Krylon, but it needs to say acrylic on it.
Okay.
And that's all I can tell you about the spray stuff.
Okay.
But yes, people do use sprays. I just don't care for them.
Yeah.
What do you look for when you're out picking up rocks?
Well, I've started to look for rocks that will stand up. That you can do. I've done a couple that really stand up real nicely. I look for flat surfaces that are fairly smooth and ones that are not too heavy for me to lug back to the car. So, finding the smooth is a little tricky because we've got a lot of rocks that are pretty rough. This one was really rough, and I haven't painted anything on it yet, so we'll see. But I like the rocks that are, like when we did our class, I bought a bag of these at Lowe's because they're really, they're very smooth. They don't have them anymore. I'm told that you can go to landscaping companies. I mean, we were at Oak Lawn the other day, and there's these big rocks outside the new hotel, and they're big and they're beautiful and they're really smooth. And I was like, ooh, look at that, look at that. I don't think they like me carrying them away, and I don't know where they got them. I'm sure they bought them by the ton or something, but they were big and smooth. So, sizable and smooth. Smooth makes it easier.
Have you ever gotten a rock you weren't supposed to?
I tend not to try to, I don't collect out of the national park. I think it is illegal to pick up rocks in the national park. But we go out into the forest a lot. The Ouachita National Forest is pretty big, and I don't think anybody, if they don't want me to pick up a rock, they're going to have to, come chase me down. Oh, the other thing is you can actually make rocks. Now, I've never done this, but there's a company, I think it's called the Happy Dotting Company, and they sell you these molds. And then you can mix a cement or something and pour it in. Now, I haven't done that, but a lot of people that sell online want a very uniform, smooth rock to paint on, so they do it a lot. Like I say, I haven't done it, but...
Yeah, like
River rocks. Yeah, river rocks are... river rocks tend to be smoother if you can... like... The ones that I used to buy at Lowe's, they called these river rocks. Now, I think they were done in a tumbler. I don't think they went out and picked them up because they were all too, their finish was too uniform. Yeah, they'll sell them as river rock. And if you're in a place where the rivers are really, as long as it's legal to pick it up. Try to keep us all out of trouble.
What was the most difficult thing you ever had to paint?
When you guys called me and said you wanted me to do rocks to gift to the speakers, I went, oh, I've got to do 5 rocks that actually look good in a week. That was the hardest one, yeah. There's plenty of them that end up, kind of like down at the bottom of the hill somewhere. So rocks are cheap, But anybody else have any questions?
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.